This is topic B on page 83, creating a resource calendar. Now that you've entered resources into your project plan, you may also need to create custom calendars for the resources to account for the availability of individual people or other work resources. In this topic, you'll do just that. So if you have created and applied a base calendar for your project before you start building your resource list, that calendar will automatically appear in the base calendar column for each work resource. So you can see some of these are based off the standard base calendar, some are off the BWH standard calendar. However, if the working and non-working times of your project calendar do not coincide with the availability of a resource, you can create a resource calendar. A resource calendar is specific to a particular resource. For example, a resource calendar might reflect a resource's personal vacation schedule. So, volunteer 4 might take off for a week, so we have to take into account that in our calendar so we know when we're able to assign him to different tasks. If you are using Microsoft Project in an environment with Microsoft SharePoint or Project Server and integrated with your email server, the human resources in your project can update their own calendars. If configured by your administrator, this will enable Project to alert you to any potential conflicts. If you want to make a new calendar for one of your resources, you can double-click on the resource name to open up the Resource Information dialog box, and your resource availability table is shown along the bottom here. So there are times when a resource may not be available until a certain date or not available after a certain date. For example, you may need to hire a contractor who doesn't start until a certain date, or you may depend on a person who is moving to another department at the end of the month, or a piece of equipment that must be returned by a certain date. In these cases, you can use the Resource Availability table in the Resource Information dialog box to set a start or your available from date, which you can indicate in this drop down, available to. So you can put when this particular resource is available and how many units of work they're available to supply. So you can also use the availability table to set a time period when a resource has more or less availability to work on the project. For example, if a person can only spend half of his or her time working on the project before a certain date, you can set his or her units to 50% during that time period. So in the next video, you'll actually be seeing some examples where Gary Clark is not going to be available to work on Fridays, and he's only going to be able to work from the dates of July 11th, 2016 to, I believe, December 31st, 2017. So before and after those dates, he will not be available to work, so we're going to update his resource availability. And you're also going to be able to change his working time, because you're going to go down to the work week tab, and you're not going to excuse me, he's not going to be able to work on Fridays, so his default schedule of Monday through Friday, 8 to 12 and 1 to 5 will have to be changed. Okay, so you'll see that in the upcoming activity 4.2. So these are going to be different examples that you're doing in this activity, and it will be regarding an attorney. So this is going to be activity 5.2 on page 85 coming up in the next video.